So, like I said, a lot of hosts will have like some sort of one-click install with WordPress. I'm just showing you the manual way just in case you don't have that option, but also just in case anything is like going wrong, like with that particular like one-click install. So, for our hosting, you want to go to this uartce.com, a regular colon, and then 8443.
Can you go there right now?
Yeah.
So not under, like,
No, that's where you want to go. Yeah. I just wanted to go make sure everyone. So, oh yeah. So you probably could also get to it via. So my login is J Davis. Oops. Which means that I could also get to it from this. Both of these should be about the same. Again, replacing your username / your subdomain with that. So you want to put in your username and password. And oh boy. Okay. So once you log in, you should see a screen that looks something like this. The main difference would just be that this should be your subdomain and not mine. So, in order to install WordPress, we need to do two things. First, we need to set up the database, and we need to actually upload the files. So, let's do the database first. So, with most hosts, we'll have some sort of option when it comes to actually managing databases. It depends on your hosting plan. But a lot of normal kind of typical hosting plans nowadays will have at least a couple of databases that you can access. So for Media Temple, you can go ahead and click on databases from the left menu here. Now you might not actually have this box here. This box represents one of my databases. So if you don't have any databases installed yet, you probably don't have this box. But you're going to click on where it says Add Database up here. Now, a database is going to have 3 pieces of information which you need to make sure you're keeping track of. There's going to be a database name, a database username, and a database password. All 3 of these things are things that you're going to have to enter into WordPress once, and then you can just completely forget. So you don't have to remember this username and password a lot. You're going to do it for the install, and for the most part, you can just forget it altogether. So I highly recommend doing something that's relatively secure, because just in case, like if a hacker, someone that actually knows what they're doing, actually has access to your database information, they could really mess up your website. So I would recommend like having like a pretty secure password, username and everything like that. So, for this database name, we're going to say jdavis_. I'm going to put in today's date just to kind of flush out some, making this a longer database name. And, I don't know, we'll put in WP for WordPress. So, right now I'm going to go ahead and copy this database name in a separate just notepad just so I have it for a reference when I go to do the install. So for the username, I'm going to, again, put in some kind of username. We don't want it to be too short. And again, it should just be something that's, not too short. And I'm going to go ahead and copy it again in a notepad file so I have it for later reference. So this is the database name. This is the username. For the password, Media Temple has a nice way that they do a generate. I'm going to click on show so I can actually see it. I'm going to see that password. I'm going to go ahead and copy it. I'm going to do generate again, and I'm going to paste it so that it's twice as long. So it says that it's very strong. And I'm going to copy and paste that where it says confirm password. So we now have the database name up here, we have the username up here, and we're going to have a password right here. So from here I can go ahead and click OK. And we now have our database. Now, with Media Temple does this automatically, so you don't have to do what I'm about to do here. However, for a lot of hosts that I've noticed, they don't automatically give access, even when you create the username, a database username, they don't automatically give access to the full database. So there's somewhere within like the database controls that you would look for as far as database access, or might say like database permissions or something like that. And it would have a lot of checkboxes that look something like this, like that will have these different commands. You don't have to really worry about what these things are. It's just a lot of SQL commands that will give this user, WP blah 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 JD, it will give this user permission to use this database. So again, Media Temple does this for you automatically, but just in case, if you're on another host and there's something that's going wrong, you want to double check to make sure that the username has all the permissions, basically all of them, for that database.
If you wanted to add a new user to the database that wasn't yourself, if you wanted to add a new user to the database that wasn't yourself, I wanted to give you access to my database so you can also have your own login.
Sure, yeah. So yeah, you could also add in multiple users to the same database. A database user can have access to multiple databases. Yeah, you could potentially do that. Now, if you're trying to give somebody access to your WordPress, I mean, definitely you want to create the users through WordPress. Really, the only reason why you'd want to give access to the database is if they were kind of a fellow developer, like they're actually, if they kind of know what they're doing when it comes to PHP and MySQL stuff. Yeah. Like I said, hopefully once you actually have this installed with WordPress, you don't have to deal with much of this afterwards. I'm going to be kind of going back over the semester. I might be going back and forth in the database to just kind of show you guys a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes. But a lot of development can happen outside of the actual database. Yep. Yeah. So, now that we have that database and we actually have the information for that, as far as the database name, the username, and the password, we have the database set up. Now we just need to install the files. So, you want to go to WordPress.org, not WordPress.com, but .org. You want to go to the big blue button and go ahead and download that zip of WordPress files. So I already have this zip downloaded here. And from this point, we can go one of two directions. We need to take all the files that are within this zip here. We need to take all the files that are inside of this, and we need to get that on our uploaded to our host, either via FTP or through the file manager here. Now, there's, again, two different ways we can go about this. One way is to unzip this here. And then through your FTP program, a second.
Did you say unzip it?
So this is one way of doing it. You can unzip it on your computer. And then in your FTP program, what you can do is you can go ahead and take all of those files and make sure that all of these files, you can drag and drop them or whatever your FTP program allows as far as moving them to your actual host. Now, when you do it this way, it's going to basically upload each file individually. Sometimes that takes a little bit of time, even though this whole thing is not that big. It's 9 megabytes. However, it's a lot of files, and sometimes even though it's not that big as a whole, it takes a long time to get all those files over. There is a slight shortcut to doing this, where what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to upload the zip. Yep. Oh, so this is through my FTP program. This is through FileZilla.
So like I would go on this stuff.
Yeah, you can do this through CyberDAV.
And just put it, just drag it and put it on this.
Yeah.
So do you want
Sure, yeah. Another way you can do this, again, FTP is one way that you could upload files. Another way you can do it through Media Temple is if you already log into your dashboard, you can go into where it says Files. And this will be your online file manager. So this is an alternative to FTP. And what you're first going to see is you're going to see the root of all your different files. You want to go into HTTP docs. And that's going to be the actual root of your website. Now from here, if I didn't do it through the FileZilla already, what I could do is from here, I can hit upload, and I can find the file on my computer, and I can go ahead and upload that zip to get this file. So for yeah, so for whatever reason you don't have access to the FTP program, or you just prefer to do it through this, you can do it this way. Now, I have the zip uploaded. At this point, I can go through the file manager. I can hit the checkbox next to this zip, and up here it says extract files. So when I hit extract files, basically what this is doing is it's unzipping it actually on my host. So rather than, and again, both ways of doing it is fine, but rather than unzipping it here and then trying to download, upload rather, all of these files individually, what I can do is I can upload just one zip, and then through the file manager, I can do the extract files, and it unzips it actually on the server. So both ways of doing it is fine. This is just a little bit of a shortcut if you just want to do this a little bit quicker. Now,
how do you know that it extracted the file?
okay, so if you downloaded this from WordPress.org, chances are when you unzip it, it's going to put this into a folder that just simply says WordPress. Now, on mine, it actually does it inside of another folder, but we have a folder called WordPress. And again, this is unzipped on my computer. If I go into that, then I see all these different files. When I extracted it through the file manager, I have a folder that's here that's called WordPress. Now, we want to move all the files that are inside of WordPress. We want to move them into the above folder. This is HTTP docs. This is the actual root of my website. So I want to move all these files that are in here, I want to move them outside the folder into HTTP docs.
Should you delete the zip file now?
Say again?
Should you delete the zip file?
You can. Here, let's go to move it first. So I'm going to go into the WordPress folder. I'm going to hit this checkbox, which is going to select all of the files and folders in here. And then I'm going to hit the move button here at the top. And it's going to ask me where I want to move these files. I'm going to go ahead and select on HTTP docs, which is again the root of my actual website. And we'll hit the replace just in case. And we'll hit OK. Cool. So it says the files are successfully moved. I'm going to go up one folder or back to the HTTP docs. and I can see all those different WordPress files that are in here. At this point, yes, we can go ahead and I'm going to select one that's zip. I'm going to also select on that WordPress folder because it's empty now. And with both of them selected, I'm going to hit remove, which is going to delete them. So, assuming you have all of the WordPress files here inside of HTTP docs, it needs to be definitely inside HTTP docs, not in any folder inside of HTTP docs, but in the root of HTTP docs. Assuming we have that, then I should be able to navigate to my domain, which in my case is just jdavis.uartce.com, and then we can run through the WordPress install process. So, once again, if you don't want to bother with that unzipping through the file manager, again, there's nothing wrong with doing it through the FileZilla. You just want to make sure that all of these files that are inside that WordPress zip are inside of the root of HTTP docs with your FTP program. Well, you shouldn't have to worry about that. All you need to do is if you go to the root of your website, which mine is just jdavis.uartce, but you would put in, as far as your subdomain, which is the same thing as your username, .uartce.com. But if you navigate to this, then it will automatically take you through the WordPress install process. Go to your file manager. Those look great. Try putting it in /w at the end of your. And so at the end of your domain, put in. No, at the very end. For .com. Yeah, put in /. No, put in /WP at the end. Yeah, that's right.
I think I made a mistake. So, HTTP docs have this.
Okay.
This has all
So,
the files.
yeah,
in it?
go into the WordPress. Just go and click on the folder name.
Okay.
So when we want to
And then
move
click
all
off,
these,
and
yeah.
then-
Yep. Now you can delete this if you want to, just as far as cleaning things up. If you go back one folder again, back to HTTP docs, you can go ahead and delete the WordPress folder as well as that zip. But that's up to you.
This one.
Yeah, it's really just a cleanup thing.
This one. Okay.
Yeah. So now you should be able to actually navigate to your subdomain. And if you put in your subdomain, it should start you through the WordPress install process. Do Command Shift R to do a hard refresh. Really? Do the same thing. Go back to your subdomain. No, in the other tab.
This one.
Yeah. And at the very end, after the .com, put in /WP -admin. Yep.
Oh,
it's not doing it automatically. Yeah. So normally it automatically redirects if you just go to the root, but for whatever reason it wasn't doing that for you, Jessica. But okay. So I'm going to go with English because that's the only language I understand. And then it's saying, you know, you're going to need this information. We already copied this down. So I'm going to hit Let's Go. So the WordPress the database name, we're going to go ahead and put in that database name. For the username, we're going to put in the database username. Make sure you replace all of it. And for the password, we're going to go ahead and put in that password. Now, where it says database host and table prefix, for most hosting things, we don't have to change this. Where it says localhost and WP underscore, that's perfectly fine. There's only other specific kind of hosting situations where we'd have to make some changes there. But assuming you have all that information in, we can go ahead and hit submit. And run the installation. So, if we get this screen, that means that everything installed correctly. So we just have to set the beginning parameters for our WordPress website. So we're going to give it some sort of site title, CE2224 class. Sure, that's fine.
Quick question. You said table prefix can just
Stay the same, yeah.
Just leave it like that?
Yep.
Okay.
Last one, should I call it like feeling one?
Yeah, you would actually want to give it the name you have.
So
So
you still do the CE2224 and
no. You can call it just Food and Wine. You don't have to brand it C. This is just what I'm doing for the demonstration
and there
today.
could be spaces.
With the site title, yes. Yeah, you can put in spaces there.
Can I understand?
Yeah, that's probably fine. So this username and password you definitely do want to remember. So it's a good idea to make sure that it's like strong and secure, but at the same time it should be something that you definitely remember well. Now I like to make sure that my passwords are installed in another program that I use, so it doesn't really matter how strong it is, but
You put in
for now, I'm just putting this in Notepad. But I actually use a program called InPass. Sure, I'll endorse it. If you go to inpass.io, it's a program that exists. It's software that exists on your computer, and it's a way to just keep passwords. So you sign in with a master password, and it just keeps a bunch of passwords for you inside of this program. It's similar to like what you would have like with like LastPass or 1Password or something like that. It's just that this one is installed on your computer, whereas those other ones are services which are online. But anyway.
so unless your computer gets hacked.
Sure. But the thing is, this program, you have to use a master password just to get into it. And supposedly it has like really, really secure things on it. So even if your computer was stolen, someone would still need that master password to get into it. But anyway.
This information is different than the other.
Yes, and again, this username and password is definitely something you do want to remember. Now, there is a forgot your password, so that you can always reset this if you need to, but you do want to try to make sure this username and password, because this is how we're actually going to log into our WordPress website as an admin. So this can be completely separate from what you do with your database username and password. I mean, in theory, it could be the same, but I would recommend it not be, just so you can kind of keep things separate. This database information, you only have to enter in once, so you can make sure it's as secure as possible, and then just forget it.
Now, the site title, how important is that for it to be recognizable, or is that something you're going to be giving to people?
Oh no, you can set your own site password, site title if you want. This is something that's, yeah, it's completely up to you as far as what you want to set the site title up.
But how is that used?
So the site title is going to be, in theory, part of the SEO. Like, so when we first go to the website, just right out of the box, you are going to see the site title like as part of the default theme, and it's going to like be projected. This is blah 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 website. We're going to be completely replacing the theme, which means that the site title at the end of this is only going to automatically show up as far as the actual title. When I'm talking about the title tag in HTML, the actual title of the page. So what we see at the very top of like the tabs here.
Right.
So the site title is going to show up there, and it's important for, like I said, SEO stuff. So if you want your website to show up on Google pretty well, it's a good idea to have a good site title. But basically, this is going to be the website title, so it should be something that's branded pretty well to the actual website. And it's also something you can very easily change later on too. So you don't have to stress too much about it yet at this point. So again, username and password should be something you want to remember. There is a forgot your password, but that forgot your password is tied into what you put in as far as the email here. So you do want to make sure that you put in an email that you can actually check, because this is going to be where it sends the password reset if you ever need to reset this password or you forget it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit discourage search engines because I just don't need search engines looking at this website right now. But obviously for a real website, you don't want to make sure this is checked. Because you want your websites to be visible in search engines. So, assuming I have all that information in, I'm going to hit install WordPress. And it says that it was successful, so now I can log in. So when I log in for the first time, go ahead and use this username and password. And I'm taken to the dashboard. Now, right now I am in Firefox. I'm going to open this up side by side in Chrome so I can see what my users say. So if I went to, if I go to my website right now in a different browser, jdavisyource.com, this is what anybody would see when they first visit my website. So there's a default theme in there, there's some default images in here, there's a default text in here for the first post. This is what everyone sees right out of the box when I first install WordPress. And again, Angie, as you were asking before, this is where that site title is going to come apart. We're going to, with a starter template, we're going to completely rip this whole thing apart.
Oh, okay.
So that it's going to be a blank screen. Yeah, but the thing is, you will see, again, it as part of the title tag. If I view the source on this, it puts in yeah, so it puts in that title in the title tag, which means, again, it's showing up here. But like I said, for the starter template, we're going to almost completely rip this thing apart. Okay. So this is what my viewers see when they visit my website. And if I'm logged in, this is what I'm seeing as far as the dashboard. I can, of course, look at the homepage of this from this browser. If I go into where it has the site title up here, I go to visit the site, I can see what this looks like as a logged in user. As a logged in user, I get this black bar at the very top. God bless you, if I'm not logged in, then I don't get that black bar at the very top. So as I'm browsing the website, again, you want to pay very close attention to whether or not you have that black bar. It tells you whether or not you're actually logged in. Now, I'll very often, as I'm working with WordPress websites, kind of keep a separate browser, again, like where I'm not actually logged in. not just a separate tab, but actually a separate browser, so that I can kind of see it from my user's perspective. So, before we get into installing the starter template, let's talk about a couple of things to just set this thing up to begin with. Now, one very important thing before I continue, just as a reminder, the idea behind this website that we're building, the first one that we're building, is that we are starting from scratch. So we're going to a client and we're saying, hey, we're going to build you a WordPress website and we're going to start with the design process. So I'm going to show you some Photoshop documents. We're going to talk about the design of it. And once we actually approve of the design, I'm going to create a website that looks exactly like that. So again, this is a very different process than if you were to start from a template. This first website that we're building, the assumption is we're starting from scratch with the design, which means that there's no part of this that would necessarily be stuff that we want to keep. And we're kind of starting from scratch when it comes to the actual look of this. So, a couple of things when it comes to the setup of this. I'm going to talk about just a couple of basic things, but also some security concerns as well. So, if you see this from a viewer's perspective, like we get the this header image here, we get the very first post. By default, WordPress is a blog. It will act like a blog, which means that someone creates posts in the back end, they'll create posts in the dashboard, and the most recent post will appear on this homepage. So this will just be a list of the most recent posts. It'll have a date, a title, a little bit of content. You click on that post title, you get the full content. You even get a comment section here so that people can interact with your website via the comments. But when you go to the homepage of this, we're getting the most recent posts. We also get this sidebar. The sidebar will have a list of titles of the most recent posts, the most recent comments. It'll have an archive so that you can go back into the month and year of other posts. It'll have different categories so you can categorize the posts. And it has this meta information. The meta information being a quick way to get into the login screen, so I can click on that and I can get into the login screen, as well as RSS stuff, as well as a link back to WordPress. We get this footer that says proudly provided by WordPress. So, by default, and again, this is very important to remember, by default, WordPress is still kind of in its roots as far as it assumes you want to create a blog. Now, I don't like anything in this sidebar for a normal website. We're not creating a blog. We're creating a website that's going to be completely controlled by the people that are going to be creating posts for this, news articles, things like that. Which means that when it comes to comments, we're going to remove comment functionality altogether. There are very few cases where I've built websites that actually include a comment section. It opens up the door for a lot of kind of security concerns, as well as just concerns with people commenting on things and it not, being appropriate for your website. Yeah. So the thing is, when it comes to comments, if a client really, really wants comments on their website, there are plugins that will kind of manage that a little bit better than what WordPress does the default, and also as far as like security concerns. But the number one thing, a website that has comments enabled on it, the number one thing that a client cannot get around is they need moderators, and not every client has the time to actually moderate comments on their website. So it's very important to tell clients, like, we can do comments if you want, but if you don't have the moderators to actually moderate this stuff, then it's a very dangerous thing to have. We're going to remove comment functionality altogether. We're also going to remove other parts about this sidebar. If we have a sidebar on our website, that's fine, but we want to be able to create that from scratch. We don't want to have to worry about tiptoeing around what's already here. Also, I really hate the fact that it has this login thing right from the homepage. That just is inviting hackers into this. So,
Because if the shift recipe is going to be in there.
exactly. You're the only one that should know how to log into your website. Let's go back to the dashboard. So, a few things to set up even before I get into the themes for this. Let's go into settings, and let's start in general. So, in the general settings, this is where I can go ahead and change that site title anytime I want to, mostly just for SEO purposes. We have a tagline here. It says, just another WordPress website. This is rarely going to come up. As you can see, when I did the view source on this, it did come up as part of the title here, part of the title tag, just another WordPress website. I'm not sure exactly all the different places that use this tagline, but very often I'll take it out. For like a real website, it might be something which is important to the client, yeah. Anyway, a lot of this rest of the stuff with the general settings we can ignore. One thing that is does help though is this time zone. If you have posts which are time stamped, it's a good idea to make sure this time zone is within your actual time zone. We're going to set this to New York, so that as far as timing, things actually exist within that time zone. We have date format and time format. I mean, this is just personal preference kind of stuff, but you can go ahead and change that if you want your dates or times to look a specific way. So with any of these settings, I'm going to go, as I make the changes, when I go to the bottom, I'm going to hit Save Changes. So that's under General. Under Writing, yeah, we can ignore this stuff for now. Yes, okay. So under reading, the first thing is it's saying homepage displays. So by default, again, WordPress wants to be a blog. So by default, the very first thing is going to be the latest post. This might be fine for a normal blog. We're actually going to use a static page because we're going to set up our very own homepage for this. So we can do a static page, and it only has one page in here for now. So maybe we'll come back to this once we actually set up the initial page. Under discussion. Discussion is the way that WordPress talks about comments. And again, 90% of your websites are probably not going to have comments enabled. So I would recommend where it says... Okay. So for this very first, third checkbox, I should say, where it says allow people to post comments on new articles, I would uncheck that. That means that any new pages that you create, any new posts that you create, people are not going to have commenting enabled on that. I'd actually also uncheck this second one here, where it says allowing link notifications. This is just another way that people can possibly spam your website, so I would uncheck that as well. Yeah, the rest of this is pretty much fine, but definitely the second and third checkbox here, I would make sure they're unchecked to disable comments on your website. And then go to the bottom and hit Save Changes. So it's that second and that third checkboxes. Yeah, make sure those are both unchecked. The rest of them shouldn't really matter as long as those two are unchecked.
Okay.
Under media, we can keep media the same. Okay, so under permalinks, I would suggest going to post name. So permalinks, this is basically when you create brand new posts, the link, the URL that it's going to give for your new post. By default, it's going to have like the date and the day in it as part of the URL. Personally, I think that for a lot of more universal websites, going to post name, which will basically just be / and then the actual post name, is a little bit easier to manage. It's mostly a personal preference thing, but it's one of those things that it's good to consider at the beginning, so that all of your posts will have the same the same URL structure. So it's a good idea to decide at the beginning, but it's again mostly a personal preference thing.
So if you make a few posts and then you go in and change this setting, then everything from that moment forward will have the new setting,
even the old ones will have the
okay.
new setting. The problem is if you're making a link from one page to the other, you're using that URL. So if you decide to change it at a certain point, anywhere that you've manually put in a link, you're going to have to go back and change all those URLs. Yeah. So the thing is, it's a good idea to decide at the beginning. That way, you know what the structure of your URLs are wherever you're creating.
Can you tell me an example of what the sample dash post would be? Like what?
So when you create a brand new post in here, so I'm going to create a post that is, this is my first post. And I can go ahead and publish this. Now it's telling me here already, the permalink for this is this actual link. If I go to this link, now this is the actual link to get to this post.
Oh, I see. So it's actually the title of whatever your post is, perhaps.
So it will use the title by default. However, you could also manually edit this. The permalink settings is basically just what is coming, well, it's just kind of the URL format. So by default, it likes to put in like the date as part of it. And I think the reason is just in case you have, like say that you call one of these, I don't know, the Ham Festival. So if there's a ham festival in 2019 and a ham festival in 2018,
right,
then you would have a definite difference here. Whereas this one, you would have to kind of make sure that, like, you know, the ham festival is part of the URL. Yeah.
Distinguishable.
Yeah. So the thing is, by default, WordPress will do it like this way. Personally, I think this is a little bit easier. It doesn't really, it's mostly a personal preference thing, but like I said, I would think about it and decide it early so that you don't create too many posts that will have the wrong URL. And once you kind of understand this a little bit better, you could even create your own custom structure that you would want if you really want to get that deep into it. So that's under permalinks. Under privacy, do I change anything in privacy? Oh, this is something that's fairly new. Yeah, we can keep this setting the same as it is right now. Okay, so those are the things under settings. At this point, what I would do is I would also get rid of anything that's already in here. So under posts, it creates a sample post for us. And I also created this second one here. Let's go ahead and remove both of those. So I'm going to hit this checkbox here at the top. With WordPress, as you know, if I click on the posts or I click on the pages, the very first thing is giving us a list of the pages and posts that are currently on there. So I'm just going to hit this checkbox. I'm going to remove everything out of here. This is just to kind of make sure that this post will never come up by accident. So you create this really professional looking news website. You don't want a hello world just to exist somewhere that someone could possibly get to on your website. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of them under bulk actions. I can say move to trash. I can hit apply, and this moves to the trash. So we now have a kind of a recycle bin for our post, and we could essentially get rid of it from there, but at this point it's perfectly fine. Under pages, like I said, this privacy policy thing automatically is something fairly new, so I'm going to have to look into that. But it creates a sample page for us automatically, and this one I would recommend just also trashing.
What was the first thing you trashed in the post? Was it, like, for me, I have Hello World. Was that one?
Yeah, so I would just trash that. Another thing that does is, if you remember under the discussion, we said that we are not allowing comments on any new poster pages. However, any poster pages which are already in there do have comments enabled. And we could, of course, go through and say, like, okay, on the Hello World post, we're going to disable comments, but I just recommend removing it altogether. This is the default on any WordPress. So if I'm a hacker and I said, like, oh, your website is on WordPress, you know what? I bet you never got rid of the Hello World post. And I bet you didn't disable comments on that. So I could go ahead and create a bunch of comments and edit that page. And you don't really want that. So I would recommend getting rid of that post altogether. And that way you don't have to worry about the comments on that page. Same thing under pages. I would get rid of that sample page one.
But keep the privacy.
Yeah, let's keep the privacy policy there for now. Now, does it have comments enabled on this? Let's see. Like I said, this is something relatively new. This is just to give you kind of a starter template to have your own privacy on there. Okay, it doesn't allow comments. It does allow trackbacks, which are almost the same thing, but doesn't matter. Anyway, so I would get rid of at least that sample one. Now, while we're here, let's go ahead and create a blank home page. So under pages, I'm going to hit add new. I'm just going to call this home. And this is just going to give us a home page to work with. I'm going to hit publish. And we're going to set this up actually as our home page. So once I create that brand new page, I'm going to go under settings, under reading. And here where it says your home page displays, again, instead of your latest post, we're going to go to a static page. And under home page, we're going to select home. We can ignore post page because we're not going to use post that way. So we're going to have a static page. The home page is set to, and this will be the exact same title that you just created for that brand new page. And we're going to set that to home. So under pages, I created a brand new page. I went to add new, and I just put in home, and I published that page. Then under settings and reading, where it says your home page displays, instead of your latest post, which is the default, we went to static page and we went to home page home. So,
Is that a lot of jumping around? I don't know, it feels like a lot of jumping around.
for the right now we're just kind of clearing some normal blog functionality out, just so that we can use this as a normal website rather than a blog website. Like I said, WordPress tries to be a blog out of the box, and some of this stuff is mostly just for security purposes, but it also gives us more of a clean template to work off of. So if I go back
Did
into...
you click discourage search engines from indexing?
I did, yeah. So if we go back into, again, what our viewers see right now, and I go ahead and refresh, instead of seeing that hello world, I should now just see home here.
Where did the sidebar go?
So yeah, so with under this page, I don't think it gives us the option there.
Is
Yeah.
it because it's a static page?
Yeah, so because this is a static page, then we don't have that sidebar by default. If this was the kind of page that lists posts, then yeah, we would get that static one. Yeah. So cool. Actually, that's a good point. Why don't we get into that for a minute? So if you go under Appearance and go to Widgets.
Is that what's supposed to happen, or did I put it in wrong? Oh, should it be home?
We'll just go to your actual home. So go to your. So take out everything after the slash, after URCE.com slash. Yeah, just go there.
Do I need the HTTP link?
Sure. Go to refresh.
Would it kind of?
Oh no, you shouldn't need that. Go to just refresh. Hold down Shift Command and R. Should be a hard refresh. Under in the top left, under your title.
On
The
this
top.
page?
No. It's the back of your dashboard.
Uh-huh.
The top left where you have your title. Go ahead and hover over the title there.
This?
Yep, and say Visit Site. Do you still have your your Media Temple dashboard open somewhere? Yeah. Try to take a look at something. Oh, it says index HTML.
Oh, is that what
okay.
it is?
Yeah.
That was there, I think.
Yeah, I actually put that in. You go ahead and log back in. I put that in for everybody's thing just so that it wouldn't be completely empty. But yeah, let's go and get rid of that index HTML. Is yours doing the same thing, Jessica? Where if you go to your root domain right now, is it just a blank page? So under your title where it says Hidden One. In the top left. Yep, go to Visit Site. Okay. Yeah, go to this one over here, and there's an index HTML somewhere. Can I go to scroll up? Yeah, go and check that. Oh no, just check it. Yeah, I don't know. Did you get rid of that index HTML?
I did, but now I'm not sure where I'm supposed to go.
So refresh this.
So delete that.
Yeah, so you want to get rid of the index HTML. Go ahead and hit the checkbox
I
there.
thought we did. Thank you.
So go to scroll down. So yeah, this is your home page right now. And so you got rid of that. Okay, cool. So, okay. So by default, this is the sign. If you go under Appearance and Widgets, so under Appearance and Widgets, this is where that sidebar comes up. Now, we probably won't be using the sidebar at all. But, like I said, I really don't like that login thing. So I'm going to get rid of this meta just to make sure it never comes up. So here on the right-hand side, this is where it's giving you what the current blog sidebar would be on any of the sidebar, any of the pages that include the sidebar. Here on the left-hand side, this is giving you basically different kinds of things you could include into that sidebar. Like potentially like a calendar or like a list of categories. These are like basically options you could put into the sidebar, and this is what the sidebar currently actually is. Let's go ahead and get rid of that meta tag there, just again as a security precaution. So if you click on the little arrow next to meta, you can go ahead and hit delete, and that'll get rid of that meta box that includes the login. And like I said, I recommend that for security purposes.
Is it easy to add it back if you decide?
Sure. But it's a really good idea to make sure that when it comes to logging into your website, that there's not a public link that goes into that. That's just something that you remember yourself. Even for clients, I would recommend to get them into the habit, or just let them know that, you know, that they should have a login screen that would be separate from like what's actually public, if that makes sense. So, like if I go to CNN.com, like there's no like login like link that for like people that are editing CNN. They just know like where to go in order to log into their
I think
website.
one of the links that you sent us had a login right at the top. Was it BBC News? I think it said BBC login.
Possibly.
Is that the kind of thing you're talking about? Because it's public and
Yeah, I mean, you want to make this as hard as possible for hackers to get into. Now, if these news sites have some sort of login, it's probably So this is for users of the website to actually sign in. This isn't for people that are editing this website to sign in. This is just like if I were to create an
like
account.
a reporter. Would it be for a reporter? They'd have to log
Probably
in?
not. So this is, if I want to create an account with BBC News, I don't know why. Like maybe, like just as a viewer, if I'm creating an account with BBC News, like maybe it's so you can have your own custom news feed. I don't know.
Oh, to
But
maybe
like I said,
or to customize the homepage or something.
yeah. Chances are this is not for people who are actually editing this website.
Okay.
And again, I would recommend not having.
But is that a public login? Like,
Yes.
is that what you're talking about?
So this is a public way of logging into this website. However, it's not for people who are actually editing the website.
Right.
This is probably, again, just for viewers if they want a log. I don't know exactly what it is.
Like if you have a BBC subscription or something.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
any sort of extra BBC
Right.
sort
Yeah.
of thing.
But you were saying
But most
that
because
that was a login.
yeah. So that login.
But that's to like edit the internal design.
Yeah.
Okay.
So so a professional website should not have a screen to log in to actually edit that website. WordPress does it automatically to make it easier, but like I said, your professional website should not really have that kind of capability. So we're getting rid of that again, just to kind of make sure this never comes up
My work site has an admin
on the.
on the homepage.
It's my recommendation.
Well,
I don't.
tell the IT people.
It's my recommendation that it's not a public thing. I don't want to disparage any websites that already exist out there. Okay. So I want to get into the themes, but there's just one last thing that I want to do before we get into the themes. And that is there's a security plugin that I like a lot that takes care of a lot of other security issues that might come up. Now, one of the biggest complaints about WordPress that's out there, for anyone that doesn't like WordPress, they're like, oh no, Drupal is better, Joomla is better, or blah 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 is better. One of the biggest complaints about it is as far as security. But in my opinion, and an opinion that's shared by a lot of people that use WordPress, is that WordPress can be something that's secure as long as you take the right steps. So one of those steps is installing a security plugin that will kind of take care of certain things to kind of just make sure your website is as secure as possible. there are a lot of security plugins that are out there. If we go to the plugins section of the dashboard, this will show us the plugins which are currently installed. One of them has to do with commenting. We can ignore that. This other one is a default plugin that just gets installed with every WordPress. It's just something that's kind of just silly, just to show an example of a plugin. It does really nothing. It's just, again, something kind of silly. But if we want to install any new plugins, one of the ways we can do it is by going through the plugins, and we can go into Add New. So from here, if we have purchased a plugin from a website that sells plugins, at this point what we could do is we could do upload plugin here, and it would kind of take us through that process as far as installing purchased plugins. When it comes to free plugins, any free plugins that are registered with WordPress. So if you're the kind of person that is actually creating plugins, you have the option of registering your plugin with WordPress, and if you're doing that, chances are you're doing it for free. Or you have the option of selling your plugin on like another website in order to actually get paid for your work. So this, where we are searching plugins here, this is where plugins are specifically registered with WordPress, and these are all free that we're going to see here. So under search plugins, if you type in security, you're going to get a bunch of different security plugins out there. WordFence is one of the most popular ones here. However, I use a different one here. I use this one that's called iThemes. Now, when it comes to any plugins, before you actually install it, you want to kind of think about like what it's actually offering, but also how professional it is. And a big indication of how professional it is and how tested it is how many people are currently using it. So I think by default, WordPress is going to, when you do these searches, by default, it's going to kind of prioritize things that are more popular, but also things that are related to whatever is here to search for. So chances are what's actually kind of towards the top are going to be the more professional ones that are more popular as well. So WordFence has over 1 million active installations, so that's a very good sign. This one has over 700,000. This one has over 400,000. Again, I like to use this one that's iTheme Security, just because I know it a little bit better. If you like one of these other ones, if you just research it and you like it better, then there's nothing wrong with that. I just happen to know this one a little bit better. So with any of these plugins, before you actually install it, you can go ahead and click on the title, and it's going to take you to a page. This page is actually hosted by WordPress.org, and it's going to give you some details on that plugin. So you would actually read through this, see like what this plugin actually offers. A lot of free plugins will say like, yeah, you get this plugin for free, but you can also upgrade to a pro version. And if you want to upgrade to a pro version, that's when you actually have to pay for it, and it will tell you what's offered in like the pro versions. You can get a sense of like different reviews, like how many people are giving this thing 5 stars versus how many people are giving it 1 star. And you can get a lot more details about it and things like that. If you know that it's a plugin that you want to install, then you can go ahead and click this install now. So again, I like this one. It's called iTheme Security. And I think that it's just one of the easier plugins to actually use when it comes to security stuff, that just simply does a lot. I'm going to go ahead and hit activate. And yeah, it brings me back to my plugins page. Now, in this plugins page, you can see right now I have 3 plugins installed, but only 1 that's actually active. So a plugin can be installed but deactivated. It's not until it's actually activated that it's actually working on your website. So I can tell that this was the only one that's active. Like, we get this blue bar that's next to it, but also the options. We see this, we can activate this one. We have the option of activating this one. And we have the option of deactivating this one. So this is telling me this is the only one that's currently active. We also have these filters up here which show us both the active ones, the inactive ones, or also all of our plugins here. So this is right now the only active plugin that I have here. I'm going to go to Settings under iTheme Security. And iTheme Security has a lot of very specific options, but at the end of the day, if you just use this one-click secure site thing, I'm going to go ahead and click on that. It has this brute force protection thing, which is also something that's very good. It's going to send your email an email basically letting you know that it's active. I would recommend hitting that. And once all of those are checked, you can go ahead and hit close. There's some good stuff in here as far as like looking through this and looking through some of the more specific security options. But at the very least, as long as you do that initial security check, I think that this is kind of plugs in a lot of the security holes that you could potentially have in your website. If you're curious, I could also take you through some of this stuff, but for now, I would recommend when you go through the settings there, just do that initial security check and just hit that for security purposes. So yeah.
I have an error when I did that one click.
So if you need to see that again, where it says security check, go ahead and hit show details, and it'll give you that option again if you hit secure site.
So I put an email address that when I get back to the network report protection.
Is that a real email to you?
It worked that time.
This, by the way, is one place. So by default, every WordPress website, if you go to /wp-admin, that's how you can actually get into logging into that WordPress website. However, there is a way to kind of disguise that behind your own kind of login URL. So you can make it /Jonathan login, and you can set it up so your own login thing. It's one of the options through this security plugin. But anyway, like I said, I won't get into too many details with this. But
does that actually make it harder for people to find your login?
Yeah. Okay, I'll show you. So if we go under, might have to go to all. Yeah. So if you go under all, I think by default it's just going to have the most recommended settings. But if you go under all and you go to where it says hide backend, if you go under configure settings for that, you're going to get a checkbox here that says hide backend. And this is basically saying that if you have this checked, you can put in your own login slug. Slug is another term for URL. So basically, instead of going to wp-admin, I would go to wp login or whatever I want. So I could say this, John's secret URL or something like that. And then basically you would have to go to jdavis.urce.com/johnsecretURL in order to actually log into it. And if somebody went to wp-admin, the website would be like, I don't know what this is. So it's only people that would know that specific slug that would be able to actually log into my website, or at least have the ability to try and log into the website. And anyone that did not go through that would have to go through the thing. So I highly recommend that, but it's optional. Hopefully with this security plugin, even without that, it would be harder to hack into your website.
But that also use for sections that require a password. Like I'm just thinking of the Below website and how some how I can't publicly display some projects. So like if I wanted one section to have a password,
So for that, I would recommend doing it a different way. So you can actually put a password on very specific pages through the dashboard. This is more for people that are actually editing the website. So for people that are actually editing the website, you want to make it as secure as possible so that like it's not. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, well, you know, clients don't want to have to go through too many hoops, but at the same time, you can kind of tell them, like, you want your sites to be secure. So we don't want a public login link. You know, we want to hide the login behind some other URL, and you want your passwords to be secure. You want to tell them that security is important. You know, so we're going to put security priority down that. But when you're
For like logging in and editing.
when it comes to actually editing the website. Now, when it comes to putting, what you're kind of talking about is using like a password to just like hide content, like so that it's only given to like people that you give the login to. So there are plugins to do it, but there's also, even without plugins, through the WordPress dashboard, you can put a password protection on certain pages for just like 6 seconds, Jets. So here, where we normally publish a page, under status, under visibility, the default is public. You can also set it to private, which means that only people that are logged in can actually see it. But what you're talking about is we can put a password on this specific page, so that we can put in a password, whatever that password is, so that if someone goes to this page, they're going to be asked for a password. They would have to put this password in, and then you can password protect a single page in that way. So I would recommend doing it that way, but yeah. One more thing before we get into the themes. If you need to set up multiple users, you can go under users. This is pretty much straightforward. Under users, it's going to show you all the current users which are set up to the website. You can click on add new. In a lot of WordPress stuff, you're going to, when you first get into that section, you're going to list of that thing. Like a list of the pages, a list of the posts, a list of the comments, a list of the plugins. In this case, you're getting a list of the users, and there's usually an add new button somewhere towards the top. So if you're adding in a brand new user, you would put in their username and email address. Email address is always required because, again, that's how people can go ahead and reset their password if they need to. And the email always needs to be unique. So you can't use the same email address more than once per user. When you're creating a brand new user, as far as the password, by default, WordPress is going to try to set a secure password for you. If you click on Show Password here, you can rewrite this password to whatever you want, or you can keep whatever WordPress gives you and kind of give users that. Under role, these roles can mean different things depending on whether it's a blog. But essentially, you want to look at these two roles here. We have editor, we have administrator. Administrator can do anything and everything to the website. Editors can do a lot of things, but they can't install like plugins or themes. I think when it comes to, I don't think they can create users. So editors can do a lot when it comes to just like basic content editing, but they can't do a lot of like administration of the website. Like I said, when it comes to like creating plugins or themes or creating new users. But again, administrators are the ones that are able to do everything. These other ones here mostly have to do with different permissions. If this was a blog website, these make a lot more sense with that. But for a normal website, I would mostly kind of stick with editor and administrator for the different permissions you would actually need. Okay. Any questions on that before we get into the themes? What anything we've gone over so far? Okay. So, if I go under appearance and themes, oh yeah. If I go under Appearance and Themes, much like the plugins, this is going to show us a list of themes that we currently have installed, but not necessarily active. So by default, WordPress is going to install 3 different, and this changes with every version of WordPress, but it looks like for now, WordPress is going to install their 2017 theme. I don't know what, they never came up with a 2018 theme, which is curious, but...
They were made with the 2017. They were made with the 2017.
I think that's what they thought. It's not bad. It's fine, but anyway. But they also have their 2016 theme. They have a 2015 theme. So we have 3 themes which are installed on here, and I have the option of activating any one of them by hitting the activate button when I hover over one of them. So we have 3 themes which are installed. The one that's currently active is this 2017. If I go ahead and hit activate on the 2015, now that's the only one that's active. If I go to, again, this is why I like to keep a separate browser open. I can go ahead and see, like, this is what my public would see if they went to my homepage right now. What? That sidebar is back. That's annoying. Anyway, so this is what the public would see. This is the 2015 theme. And if I go to activate on the 2016 theme, this is what viewers see as part of the 2016 theme. Now,
They're all like based on if it was a blog.
yeah, so the thing is, the WordPress, the creators of WordPress created these 3 different themes with the idea that they would be blog central websites. However, they're relatively efficient web themes. They're not necessarily bad, but we're going to be, again, creating one that's kind of from scratch. Now,
For WordPress.com, are the themes mostly blog
that's a good question. I'm not too familiar with WordPress.com, but I'm guessing that the themes they offer, there's probably a lot of variety there. Now, just like with plugins, if we want to seek out new themes, one way we could do, if we do the add new, that's assuming that we're installing, or no, I'm sorry. Okay. If we're going to add a brand new theme, first we can do the add now. Now, if we do upload theme, that's implying that we're installing something that we purchased somewhere else or that we created from scratch. But just like with plugins, we can go ahead and search themes here. Like we say, like, oh, I want to create a food website. And we can go ahead and search, and these are all themes which are registered with WordPress. Again, these are themes that, like, people created. They are completely free, and you can go ahead and use one of these templates as kind of a way to kind of start your website. And again, there's nothing wrong with starting from a template. However, it's a very different way of interacting with the client. When you're interacting with a client and you know that you're going to start with a template, then you want to have a discussion with the client about what's possible and what's not possible with this particular template. What we're talking about with the starter template is we're starting from scratch with like a brand new design that we're creating from scratch. So you do have the option of seeking out themes this way, and you can, of course, again, buy themes separately on other websites as well. Yes?
When it says upload, are you uploading like HTML files?
So that's what we're going to get into. So if we go to upload, by default, WordPress tries to make this easy, where you can actually upload a zip. If I were to go to a website that sells themes, like ThemeForest.com, yeah, oh, .net, sorry. ThemeForest is a website that sells themes to a lot of different things, but they specialize in WordPress especially. So if I were to buy one of these themes, it would give me a zip of a bunch of different files. And WordPress, again, tries to make this easy by saying that I can just upload that zip right in here, and it will kind of take care of the rest for us. If we're creating a starter template, which I'm going to show you in a minute, we have the option of zipping things together. But yeah, a lot of times, you're starting with a zip, but inside that zip is all the different files which are related to that theme. So,
Can I close my media template?
oh sure, yeah. Oh wait, actually, sorry. One second. Just one more minute. So the thing to remember about the themes is I can apply a theme to my website at any point, and it's going to dramatically change the look of the website. However, the great thing about a content management system is that the data for this content management system is completely separate from the theme. So that means if I create a website, and over time this website has 100 different pages, and each page has its own set of text and images and things like that, at any point I can change up the theme. And yeah, the website framework is going to dramatically change. But all the content that I created over time, all those 100 pages, the content for them is still going to be present. It might look a little bit different from theme to theme, but the content itself, it will still be intact, because we have a content management system where we separate the theme, the actual look and aesthetic of the website, from the actual data. So we have a database which has the information separate. So over the last couple of weeks, when we did this with PHP and we did this with JavaScript, we were focusing on trying to set it up so that the data would be separate from the template. And again, the great thing about WordPress, we can swap out the theme at any point, and the data itself is still going to be intact.
Yeah, probably with if you're doing a custom theme, then you can switch it out to a previous theme.
Yeah. So we're going to do a custom theme here, and we could have at any point go to another theme. Again, the framework is going to look different, but the actual data that we create within the WordPress dashboard would be the same. So, for our starter template here, on the class website, I have a link to this _s website, which is underscores.me. There are a few different what are called starter templates out there. This is one that I've had a lot of success with. It's actually created by, I think, the people that, it's by Automatic, which is has a lot of the same people that actually created WordPress, so you know that it's pretty good. So this is a free starter template, and it gives us, if you go to the website at the beginning, you'll probably just get one field here. And if you read through some of this, it'll kind of tell you like what this theme is about, why you kind of start with a starter template rather than starting from complete scratch. But yeah, what we want to do is we want to put in a theme name here. Now, I often go into advanced options. These are optional, of course. You only have to put in a theme name. But I like to go into the advanced options, and I will fill this out just so you can kind of see where the stuff actually ends up. So, this theme is with the understanding that this is something that you are creating. If I go to if I go ahead and find one of these WordPress themes, maybe it's something that I buy, like, this Moro theme, then that's the name of this theme. Yes, I as the developer am customizing this, but at the end of the day, this is the Moro theme, and it's created by whatever this person's name is, Envira. So this is the Moro theme created by Envira, and I, Jonathan, am just simply customizing it. Same thing with any sort of theme that you would find as far as the free ones. I'm customizing it, but at the end of the day, this is the Astra theme, and it's created by this author, Brainstorm Force. That's the actual author of this theme. So, when I go to _s, it's saying, well, what's this theme called and who's actually creating it? Because even though this is a starter theme created by underscores, for the most part, I can take credit for what I'm creating here, because this is going to be very much from scratch. So, when it comes to the theme name, you can call it whatever you want. However, I would recommend keeping something relatively simple. This may be something you might have to reference later on. So keep it relatively short. There shouldn't be any spaces or special characters in it. Very often, I'll also include a year into it. So I might have a custom theme called JD 2018 or something like that. When I was working for an agency, I used to just use an acronym for that agency, and I used to just use a year. That way I could track, like, okay, this is my 2017 theme, this is my 2018 theme. Things, it'd be easier to track that way. But it's up to you. This is where you can kind of take some ownership of it. So we have the theme name. Now the theme slug should probably just be the same thing as the theme name. Technically, we can create a different actual name. Let's call this Jonathan 2018 theme.
We call it 2018. We call it 2018 right now.
Because WordPress is number 2018. Yeah, we can take ownership of that. Sorry, I said no spaces or special characters. The slug should not have spaces or special characters. So the name can be whatever you want. The slug should not have any spaces or special characters. So this one, I'm just going to call it Jonathan 2018. And again, take some ownership of it. If you're working for an agency, they might want ownership of it, but that's whatever. And then the slug should be something relatively simple without spaces or special characters. The slug, you might have to remember. The rest of this, you won't. I'll show you where this information goes. So you can kind of get a sense of what you would actually want to put here. But for the most part, you don't have to remember most of this, except for maybe the slug. The author, let's put in my name, Jonathan Davis. For the URI, also URL, this is like if I professionally wanted to create themes in general, or if I'm just working as a freelancer, this would be my portfolio website, or this is where I would sell things. So I'll say jonathandavis.com, even though that's not actually my real domain name. Some singer owns that. But the description, we can put in whatever we want here. This is Jonathan's 2018 theme description. Okay. So like I said, when you first go to underscores ME, it's just asking for the theme name. This is where you would put in the slug or whatever. Anyway, the rest of the stuff is optional. However, it's not a bad idea to come put this stuff in. And like I said, I'm going to show you where the stuff actually exists. I wouldn't check the WooCommerce or the Sassify. WooCommerce is one of the most popular WordPress e-commerce plugins. And it is, if you're doing an e-commerce website, if you're actually selling stuff through WordPress, it's pretty helpful. However, we're not doing that for this particular class. So I'm just going to leave that unchecked. The Sassify I'm also going to keep unchecked. That's if you want a CSS generator, which we're not actually using here. So I have the information filled out. I hit generate, and like I said, it gives me a zip. That zip, the title of that zip is going to be the same thing that I have for my URL, the slug, which is off to go the URL. So I'm going to go ahead and save that somewhere. Yes. So first, I'm going to save it to my computer. Now, before we actually upload this, and there's a couple of different ways we can upload this. But before I actually upload this, let's take a look at these files for a minute. So I did unzip this on the WordPress. I unzipped the WordPress on my computer. And if I take a look into this, inside of the folder that says WP-content, WP-content is split into two different folders, one for plugins and one for themes. If I go into plugins, I see the plugins which are currently installed. One plugin, which is that getting my windows mixed up here. So, one plugin is this Askamet. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Which is represented by this folder that's Askamet. If I go into this folder Askamet, I see a bunch of different files which are related to this plugin. This other one, which is this Hello Dolly, is actually represented by this single PHP file. Most plugins are going to be represented by a folder with that plugin name. And this would tell me all the plugins that are installed in here. Now, I unzipped WordPress on my computer, and this is what is by default in there. We have Askamet, we have Hello, we also have an index, but we can ignore that. So we have these two plugins in here. If I go into Media Temple, and am I still logged in? Of course I'm not. Yeah, it's a security precaution. In a way, it's trying to protect us, but it's kind of annoying. Anyway, if I'm back in Media Temple and I'm under the file manager, if I go under HTTP docs, again, I see all different files that I would see when I unzip this on my computer. If I go under WP content, I see plugins, I see themes, I also see upgrades and uploads, which were not in this. So as soon as I install WordPress, it starts to actually create some extra folders and files within the install. So this is what I get in the zip, but this is what is actually live on my host. So we have plugins, we have themes, we also have these other two folders for upgrade and uploads. If I go into plugins, I see the Askamet folder, which is representing that one plugin. I see that hello.php. I also see this folder that says Better WP Security. That's that iThemes plugin that I just installed. So when I installed that, it added a folder in here, and inside that folder are a bunch of files which are related to that plugin. Now, themes are kind of the same thing. If we go into themes on my actual host, I get a folder that says 2015, and a folder that says 2017, and a folder that says 2016. Each of these folders represents a theme which is currently installed, not necessarily active, but installed and available on my actual WordPress host. And if I unzip this on my computer, again under WP content, under themes, I still see those three folders, 2015, 2017, 2016. So, there are two different ways to install my brand new starter theme that I just downloaded. So it gives me this zip. There's two different ways to install this into my WordPress. One is to FTP this zip, or I could actually unzip this. And it's going to give me a folder. It's called JD2018. Again, that slug is going to keep coming back over and over again. So I have this folder, JD2018. Oh boy. And because of the way that Windows does this, it creates a folder within a folder. Give me one second here. Okay. So I have a folder, JD2018. And if I go into that, I get a bunch of files that are related to this particular theme. The same way that if I go into the 2015 folder, all these files are related to the 2015 theme. Or the 2017 folder, all these files are related to the 2017 theme. So, one way that I can do this is I can upload the zip or the actual folder into this directory under WP content, under themes. This is where it needs to go, into this folder. I can upload the zip or I can upload the actual folder with all the files in there. But if I don't want to have to deal with the file manager and I don't have to want to deal with the FTP program like FileZilla or CyberDuck, I could also do it through the dashboard itself. So if I go into themes, I go into add new, I can go to upload theme, and it's going to say, hey, do you have a zip for me? And I'm going to say yes. So I'm going to go ahead and browse, and I'm going to go ahead and find that zip that I downloaded.
Should we do both? Do both or one or the other?
So you want to do one or the other. So this way that I'm doing it is not through the FTP or the file manager. This way that I'm doing it is through the actual WordPress dashboard.
I just did it through manually simple and uploading.
Yeah, that's fine. It's really fine. If we do it this way, then okay. So it's looking for a zip. I can go ahead and hit up, open, and install now. Beautiful.
How do you remember all of this?
Because I've done it 1,000 times. No, seriously. The more you do it, the more you kind of understand it. And there's various tutorials and things like that online as well. I think that the way that I'm showing you is kind of the most straightforward way of doing it, in my opinion.
I have a quick question. What exactly is the underscores? Sorry. What exactly is it?
So, give me just 1 second just to kind of finish this part, and I'm going to show you what that actually is. So, if we go through that, we install the theme, it's going to, hopefully all of this goes through correctly. It might have an error here, which means you might have to try something again depending on what the error actually is. Now from here I can go ahead and activate, but let's not do that quite yet. I'm going to go to Return to Themes page. And now, in addition to the 2017, in addition to 2016, 2015, I now see a theme here that says Jonathan 2018 theme. If you remember from the underscore S, getting all these folders mixed up here. That's where we put in for the theme names. This is one place that theme name is coming up, is when I look at the themes here, it's that right there. Also, if I click on theme details, hey, check this out. It says by Jonathan Davis. Jonathan Davis is where I put in that author. Looks like Jonathan Davis is a link. If I click on Jonathan Davis here, it's going to take me to jonathandavis.com, which again is some singer. But that link, again, that I would normally put in for a portfolio website or where I would essentially sell themes, that is looking for author URI. URI is the same thing as URL. And if I click on this theme, then again, it's going to the portfolio one. And this is where I put in that theme description. This is where that theme description is actually going. So this is, again, the stuff that you put in here through the extra options of the simple ones. It's completely optional, but it's a nice way to kind of brand your theme so you can kind of take ownership of it. So if you create this for a client, they know that you created this, so it's like kind of branded to you. And none of this stuff is necessarily public. So if somebody goes to CNN.com, and that was created with Jonathan's theme, they wouldn't necessarily know it unless they were really kind of, someone would have to kind of take a look at like the source code and things like that to be able to find any of that. But again, it's a nice way to kind of brand yourself. So I have this theme. You might notice a lack of an image here. This image is actually something you could potentially put in here, which I'll show you later. But this is my theme here. Again, the theme isn't actually real until I actually activate it. So this is the one that's currently active. I can go ahead and activate on this. And now my starter theme is actually active in here. So if I go back to this, the way that my viewers actually see this, I see my starter theme actually active on my website. And it is ugly. It is the ugliest thing I've ever seen in the world. But that's because... Huh? But that's because the starter theme is trying to be a blank slate. So when I use the... I don't know, the 2016. Let's go with 2016. So if I activate the 2016 theme, it's like, yeah, I mean, it's pretty basic. Come on. Activate. If I take a look at the 2016 theme, yeah. So yeah, it is pretty basic, but even certain things like this text, if I don't want this font, then I have to overwrite that. If I don't like the way that this is here on the right, I have to overwrite that. If I don't want just various things about the way this thing looks, anything about it I have to actually overwrite. By having a starter template, it gives us a completely blank slate to actually work with, which means that we rarely have to overwrite what's currently there. We can start from scratch. Now, you asked Jason as far as like, well, what do we actually get from a starter theme? Let's go ahead and open up this. I mean, you don't necessarily have to do this, but I'm going to go ahead and open this folder that we got with this zip here. So we have a bunch of files here. Tell you what, let's do this from the file manager. That way you can actually see it a little bit better. If I go ahead and refresh this, this is my themes folder. I refresh it, I now have a folder, JD 2018. If I go into that, so these are all the files that exist within this the starter template. So you might say like, well, we're starting from scratch, but we still have all these files in here and these folders that have other files in here. Yes. So what underscores the team at underscores has given us here is they've given us a bunch of files which we would need in order to actually work within the WordPress system. So with a static HTML website, then all we need are the pages that you actually create from by hand. So we just need those HTML pages. We need the CSS files, we need the JavaScript files, we need whatever images that we have here. In order for a theme to actually work with WordPress, then it kind of helps to have some of these files excuse me, specifically named the way they are and specifically formatted the way they are. So for example, if I go to a page that doesn't exist, I put in slash blah blah blah, this is going to a 404 page, and it says, oops, that page can't be found. And it knows to go to that 404 page because it's going to this PHP file here. So if that file didn't exist, then WordPress would get really confused when we go to a page that doesn't actually exist. And to be honest, I'm not exactly sure what would happen if we didn't have that in there. But by having that file in there, it gives us at least some template to work with. So I can actually open up this PHP file, and I could customize what this 404 page would actually look like. So you see where it says here, oops, that page can't be found? I could customize this title so that I could say whatever it is that I want. And where it says, blah, 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 it looks like nothing was found at that location. This text here, I can go ahead and update this particular PHP file, and I can change some of this text, change other things about this. Like for example, the default 404 page gives us this search bar here. It gives us other categories to help us if someone is on the wrong page. Maybe they want to do a keyword search. Maybe they want to look through the categories, the archives. all of these options here are part of this 404 page. And it wouldn't be necessarily obvious how to do this from scratch. So this starter template, well, it looks, I keep saying ugly, it looks plain. Like there's no style to it whatsoever. There's no layout, there's no style, but it's just giving us the building blocks of like, well, this is how you would include the categories, this is how you would include the archives, this is how you would include a search bar, so that we at least have something to work with. And it makes it easier to apply a static HTML template to this. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
So the thing is,
It's
yeah.
basically a theme. It's just there's no CSS and the HTML, just like as basic as possible.
Yes, exactly. There's no CSS. Well, there's a little CSS, but there's very, very little CSS, and the HTML is as simple as humanly possible. If I were to open up, say that I'm like, well, I don't want to do this starter template. You know what? I'm going to work off of this 2017 thing, and I get a lot of the same kind of files because this is the format. These are the file names, and like as far as the folder structure that WordPress really wants to see in a theme. So it knows how to find a 404 page. It knows how to find what your header is and what your footer is. So these names and things like that. But this is inside the 2017 theme, and if I were to open up this 404, well, I mean, it's going to look pretty similar. That's a bad example. Let's go to front page. Well, that's pretty simple too. Take my word for it. If I were to try to work from this 2017 theme or one of the 2016 themes, it's a little bit tougher because I need to figure out, like, well, what am I taking out here? What do I need to like not actually use? Now we're going to be doing a little bit of that with the starter theme, but for the most part, it's as basic as possible while still working with the WordPress system.
What is the CSS template?
CSS for the starter
Yeah,
or the 2017?
for the starter.
For the starter. So, I'm in the wrong place. So we have a style CSS here, and if I open that up, whoops, if I open that up in brackets. By the way, inside this style CSS, you're going to notice a repeat of some of that stuff we did with the underscore as. Like we have Jonathan's 2018 theme. We have the author with the author URI. In fact, if I change anything in this style CSS, if I change anything about the description, anything about the theme name, where I see this in WordPress, where it's actually pulling this information from, believe it or not, is actually from the CSS file. So when I do this in underscore s, it's actually filling in this information inside the CSS file, but I could change it straight from here, and it will reflect those changes inside of WordPress here. They actually sneak in their own theme URI here. That's sneaky. But you could also even change that if you really want to, what's called white label your theme.
Like they're linked, then you would change it in here.
Yeah. So the information that comes up in that theme, the information that comes up in this theme here is taking it from the style.css. So you can change anything in the style CSS, and it will change it in that place. Except for the actual slug. That's pretty locked in. So you can't change that once you create it. But anyway, you can see that this stuff is actually inside of a comment. We have the slash asterisk here, and all this is grayed out because all of this is actually part of a comments. And you see that even stuff here is all comments, 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 comments. We don't actually get into the CSS until we get down here. Now, we do see quite a bit of CSS here. And this is mostly just helping things to kind of be as, how to say it? It's trying to create what is often called a reset CSS template. which is trying to help make sure that things are going to be universal from browser to browser as much as possible. These kinds of reset templates are slowly starting to become unnecessary because browsers are starting to agree with each other about most things. However, it's still helpful to have like some of this stuff in here. Now, the way that I typically work with this starter template is I will kind of ignore everything here and just put in my own custom CSS. Anything I'm going to put in, I just kind of start to add towards the bottom here.
So you don't delete it.
Yeah, so I don't delete it. A lot of this stuff also helps with the responsiveness. It doesn't take care of all the work for you, but it helps with a couple of things. But I will basically just create, I'll often create like a divider here. So I'll copy the divider they have up here, paste it down here, call it custom CSS, and then any custom CSS I can go ahead and put in here. So yeah, you could, in theory, create a completely separate CSS document here, but personally I think it's easier just to kind of work with the one and just edit this the way that it is. And actually I'd like to show you guys a little bit about starting to edit this before we end today. But any other questions as far as anything else we've gone over so far?
I have a question, but not really what you were talking about. It's still related to WordPress. Should I ask?
It's about what?
It's just about WordPress in general, like when you were talking about themes and updating a theme. So if I created a whole website, but I want to change the theme, but I don't want people to log on and say like error work in progress. Like you know when you log on to some sites and they're in the middle of changing it,
Yeah.
it'll say like coming soon.
Yeah.
Or whatever, but I would want it to, be the old theme while I'm working on the new theme. Are you able to do that?
So, what I will often do is, in a professional environment, I'll have a completely separate environment where I'm working on the test or the beta as opposed to the live. I don't think.
How does that
Yeah,
work?
so you'd have a different URL, a different way of hosting it. So, very often, what I'll do is, if the website is like CNN.com, I will set up a subdomain that would be like beta.cnn.com, or maybe cnn.com/beta, or something completely separate, but it would be a completely separate URL, completely separate hosting environment. That way, I can completely customize that without worrying about what is actually public at the moment. I don't think, as far as I'm aware, there's no way to have like two themes installed on the same system at the same exact time, so that the admin's can work on something as opposed to what's actually public. There is a way to completely lock down the website altogether, like kind of put the website into what's often called maintenance mode. So basically, whenever somebody would go to it, it'd say like under construction, and you'd have a little cartoon of somebody with like a hard hat and anything like that.
Is that bad? That's bad.
As far as putting it in maintenance mode,
Yeah.
not for short periods of time. Sometimes you might be nervous about a certain update, so you want to put it into maintenance mode so that from a public standpoint, no one's able to see anything. But as long as you don't have it on for too long, it's not necessarily a bad thing. If your website is something that is getting like a lot of traffic, especially if it's something that earns your clients some money, then they may be very, very nervous about putting it into maintenance mode for a short period of time. But sometimes it's necessary. Like I said, in a professional environment, it's a good idea to have a beta. Like if the website already exists, CNN obviously already exists. So if I'm creating something new for CNN, I would want to create it in a brand new environment before actually applying all the changes.
Do you pay for, do you have to pay for the new environment? Do you pay for a new URL?
Well, assuming that, CNN will have some sort of host. I keep saying CNN, as if I'm landing that fish. Yeah, so CNN will have like their own host. So, like for example, if like with Media Temple, if there was a Media Temple, there's probably some way to add on a separate environment, a separate subdomain, or a separate what's called an add-on domain that would allow me to set up a beta environment that would be separate. So I could, if I was talking this with a client, I would say like, hey, in order to do like a beta environment, I would probably want to use some of the space that's currently on your host so that we can set this up as a beta, so you can approve of everything before we actually push it live. If for whatever reason they're like, well, I don't want to give you access, or we don't have that much space, or blah blah blah, then yeah, I mean I would have to kind of set up my own hosting for that. And I mean, if I didn't have my own host, then I would expect the client to pay for that.
And then you
that
would
would
just
create pretty
delete
small.
like when you're done, you would just delete the existing one, replace it with like change it from betas to the actual.
Yeah, so the thing is, if I have this set up in beta, I have beta.cnn.com, and everything is approved, then in theory, the main thing that I'm going to need to move from live to public is that theme folder. So I move that entire theme folder to the public website, activate it. Now, I mean, there's probably like data things that also need to be updated, maybe some menu settings here and there. But for the most part, if you're going from one WordPress website to another WordPress one, I mean, if it's already in WordPress and you're updating the theme, then the theme is the main thing that you're actually updating.
You can get a plugin also for migrating WordPress sites, so it makes it a lot easier. I also suggest usually doing your beta testing on a separate server, because I've had situations where I've like done something messed up and like crashed their server completely, and then it took me a few minutes to get it back up. So, if it, like you said, it's an e-commerce site and they're selling stuff, that could be a few lost sales.
I mean, it's one of those things where if you're making a profession out of this, and like, you know, you're a freelancer, you're gonna want your own hosting that you could potentially, like, you know, host beta environments on. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, the client should, you know, be willing to kind of pay for some of that as well. So if it's a strain on your own hosting, you have to kind of upgrade it yourself, then yeah, the client should reasonably be able to pay for that kind of thing. I mean, if it's CNN, they have some of that stuff. Does that answer the question? Okay. Okay. So let's just dip our toes into what would be involved in starting to update this the starter template. But I'm going to get more into this starting next week. But before I go too much further, what's on my computer, I want to be reflected exactly what is on the on my host. So I do have this folder for jdavis.ur@ce.com. However, I have been kind of just going back and forth on a lot of this stuff. So let's make this a little bit more related. And okay, so I'm going to go into my FTP for this. Now again, this what I'm going to be showing you could also be done through File Manager. However, I think FTP kind of makes a little bit more sense in this particular case. So for the most part, what's actually on my computer, I'm going to have a folder for this that's just what should be on my host. This is not going to include any Photoshop files. This is not going to include any notes from the class. This is exactly what is actually on my host, as much as possible. So the thing is, you can see the WP admin, you can see the WP content, it includes all these extra files here. All that's actually reflected here in the on the live website, except for the addition of a couple of folders here and there. If I go into WP content, okay. So if I go into WP content on my computer, I go into WP content on the host. I go into themes on my computer, I go into themes on the host. I go into JD 2018 on my computer, I go into JD 2018 on my host. So now I'm looking like this is the host, this is my computer. So any changes I can make here, I can go ahead and upload. And I know that's going to be reflected on the live website. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and open up this CSS in brackets. Is this running that set up already for? Oh boy. We'll just do it through fingers. Okay. So like I said, I'm going to go to the bottom of this, blah, blah, blah. Let's go ahead and create our own divider here. So this is in the style.css, which is inside the JD 2018 folder, which is the custom starter theme. So if I do body, and I go ahead and say background color, red. Actually, I never do color names, so let's actually make a red hex. So I go ahead and save that. And in my FTP, I'm going to go ahead and upload that to make sure the file is actually uploaded. And again, this is what the world sees when they go to my website. I see that red background. So any sort of CSS changes that I make in here is going to be reflected as far as the universal CSS, which is for the entire website. So if I go into the view source for this page, I see a whole bunch of HTML that, yeah, I mean, obviously I didn't write any of this HTML. And a lot of this HTML you might not even see in the PHP template files. But anything that we don't see in the PHP template files, we don't really have to worry about too much. But somewhere in here is going to be a link to that CSS file. It's going to use the link thing here, and this one is, if we kind of trace this out, we see that it is my domain /WP content /themes /my theme name style.css. Because from my root, we go into WP content, themes, my theme name, and then it's looking for that style CSS. So it's looking for this particular file, and if I go into this, this is my entire CSS, including my custom CSS down here. So this is where we can go ahead and make all of our CSS changes. When you create your static HTML, like I said, I recommend creating a divider at the very end of it, but for the most part, you can go ahead and copy and paste all of your CSS into this one file to upload your CSS. So that's the easy part. But let's talk about where it's a little bit tougher, particularly regarding the actual HTML. So, so this is what my website looks like from the public view. We get like a... Actually, let's look at this inspect element. I'll make it a little bit easier. So inside the body, we have a div that is with the ID. Right, I can't see that, sorry. Inside the body, we have a div with the ID page. Outside of the div with the ID page, There's a couple links to different scripts. We can ignore those. Those are just JavaScript files that help us do various things when it comes to navigation. But basically, all the content is inside of a page, and the only thing that's outside of that is the body itself. If we go into page, and I'm just going to drill down this so we can kind of see how page is built up. Inside a page, we have a header. We have a div with the ID content. We have a footer with the ID colophon, and that's pretty much it. So inside of the body, we have a div with the ID page. Inside of page, we have three different elements: the header, we have content, and we have the footer. As I hover over this, you can see page is everything. As I hover over the header, that's what has the title in it, as well as this. This is actually the menu, where it says home at the very top. So the header includes the actual title as well as the menu. Content includes where we have home, where it has that search bar, the recent comments, the activities, categories. Is that still pulling from? No, okay, yeah, I can show you what that is. Never mind. So anyway, the content has the actual content of the page, including the actual home title, this search bar, the comments, archives, and categories. I'm going to show you where that is in a minute. And then we have footer, which is just this one line down here that says it's created by WordPress, and it's a theme by Jonathan Davis. So that, I forgot to mention, where you put in the name, the link, that actually exists down here in the footer, but it's easy to change as well. So, the important things to remember here is we have the body, page is broken out into these three elements: the header, the div with the ID content, and this footer. So, let's go ahead and open up this header.php here. So if we open up this header.php, we have some PHP code. We notice that it's PHP code where we have the angle bracket question mark PHP. This is just some comments, which means it's nothing that's actually being affected, but it's just giving us some information here. But then the PHP code ends right here. So this is just a way of putting in some PHP comments. And by putting it into PHP rather than HTML comments, we know that it won't come up in the view source. But anyway, so we have the doc type HTML. If we view the source on this page, we have that doc type HTML. We have this HTML. Now here we have some PHP code here. And this is where it says language attributes. Basically what that's doing is it's pulling in what this language currently is, which is English US. We noticed that when we first started up the WordPress installation, we wanted it to be in English. There's actually a place to change this in the settings, but all of that is based on that. But it's pulling it through the PHP. Really, the only thing that's important here is that this is the actual start of our HTML. This is going to be the start of the HTML on every single page of our website, this header.php. And where we see this doc type and we see this HTML, where we see this head, all of that is being reflected in the HTML up here. We have the doc type, we have the HTML, and we have the head. Now, we have the ending head here. And if we look at this in the view source, the ending head tag is all the way down here. So the question is, where is it getting all this extra information that we don't see in the PHP file? Well, let's see. We do see this meta tag here that has the character set, the char set here. We see this meta tag with the viewport. We see this link with the profile. We take a look at this. We have that meta tag. We have that meta tag with the viewport. We have this link with the profile. But everything else, we see this is PHP code. Again, wherever it starts with this question mark PHP thing, that's some PHP code, and it doesn't end until we see this question mark angle bracket here. So we have this thing that says WP_head. So that WP_head is inserting everything else that we see before this ending head tag. So all of this stuff here is being inserted with that WP head. Now we don't really have to edit anything here. A lot of this has to do with generic WordPress stuff that helps various things regarding. Unfortunately, some of this has to do with the smileys and emojis you could potentially do with WordPress. It's kind of annoying. But this is where it's inserting in the link to our style sheet. This is where it would be inserting any links to JavaScript files that we could potentially add. But at the end of the day, we have this head, this ending head here. We have the beginning head here. And if we look at our header.php, this is where that beginning and ending head is. So if we wanted to add in, for example, like I said, I like to just simply work off of this same style sheet. If you say, you know what, Jonathan, I don't want to take the risk of messing anything up in this style sheet. I want to just do my own CSS. Then what we could do is within the files, we could create a brand new file that we just simply called custom-style.css. Yes. So we have this custom-style.css inside the same directory as everything else. Inside of our head, just like we would insert CSS into anything, into our static HTML, we would put in link, rel, style sheet, type, text CSS, and then for the href, we would want a link to that style sheet. Now, where does that style sheet exist? Well, it's kind of embedded in here. From the root, we're talking about WP content, we're talking about themes, we're talking about the JD 2018, and then we actually find it. So it would look something like this, where we have WP content. Of course, all these slashes are reversed. WP content, themes, JD 2018, and then custom CSS, or what do I call it? Custom style? Yeah, custom style.css. So, if you wanted to insert your own style sheet, just like you would kind of put this within a static HTML website, we're going to put this in the header.php, and we know that this header.php is being triggered on every single page inside of our WordPress website. So this would be how we could insert our own style sheet in there. Like I said, I like to work off of this one just to kind of simplify how many style sheets I'm working with. But there's nothing wrong with doing this in a separate style sheet as well.
But it will work with both style sheets, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll work with both of them. Now, technically, this one is above where I have this other style sheet. So sometimes if you're repeating certain things, like if, say we have a background color for the body in this style.css. If we have a background color for the body in this CSS, then this one is going to take priority because it comes after where we specify this link. So we set the body color here, but then down here it's actually resetting the body color. So what we could do is if we wanted this always to take precedence, what we could do is we could move it after we're doing the WP head. As long as it's still inside this this head section, it'll still apply the style sheet. So by doing it after the head, then we know that whatever we put in here will overwrite whatever we put up here. Does that make sense? But yes, to answer your question, it will use those style sheets.
That was going to be my next question,
Which takes priority.
That's the one that's on the bottom. It reads up. Is that right?
Well, it's going to read from top to bottom. So if we use the exact same reference, like for example, this is just talking about the body. We're applying a background color to the body. If we're using the exact same reference, then it's going to be whatever comes latest. So in this case, it's going to take what comes next. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions on this so far? So like I said, we're going to get into this in a little more detail. Maybe we should keep it as a separate custom CSS file. Maybe I will do that, just for simplicity purposes. But anyway, going a little bit further, again, looking at how this is actually put together versus what we're looking at in the PHP file. So we have the body. Again, only thing that's in the body is the div with the ID page. We can ignore the scripts, but pretty much all the content is inside of this div with the ID page. Inside of page, we have the header, we have the div for the ID content, and we have this footer. Let's take a look at that header.php again. Again, we have this body, we have a div with the ID page. Inside this body, we have some PHP code, which is adding in some extra classes to this. But the important thing is we have this body, we have a div with the ID page, and we also have this header. Now we have some complicated things going on inside this header, but if we trace this all the way down to where the end of this header is, we see the header actually ends right here. Then we have the div with the ID content. Now this is where the file ends. There's nothing, I can't scroll any further than this. This is where the file ends. So where we have div with the ID content, that is the beginning of this content section here. So what actually goes inside that content is going to differ from page to page to page. But everything that's before that div with the ID content, everything that's before this tag, all comes back to this same exact file, this header.php file. Every single page of our website is going to put whatever we put inside of this up here. For example, let's put in a div here that says hello world. This will exist on every single page of our website because it's inside of our header PHP. And it's going to exist in between the header tag and the div with the ID content. I'm going to go ahead and upload this. This is our header PHP file. And if we go back to our page, we have hello world, which is just right there. It's going to exist on every single page of our website. If I take a look at the view source, I'm going to go ahead and refresh this. If we look at the source, in between this ending header and in between this div with the ID content, we have this div that just simply says hello world in there. So when it comes to the header, everything that's going to exist before the div with the ID content, everything that's inside of div with ID content is going to differ from page to page. But everything before that beginning div is all controlled within this header PHP, which is the same for every single file. And as you might expect, if we open up the footer.php, this is everything that comes after that ending div for the content. So the way this starts, let me start off with some PHP code that just simply has some comments in here. You see the Jonathan over and over again. I don't know how arrogant this guy is. He has to see his name over and over again. But we have the very first thing that's in HTML, which is inside this footer.php, is this ending div, and we have this comment that says hash content here. If I take a look at the view source for this page, we have a bunch of stuff going on in here, but eventually we get down to this ending div with the comment content in here. And this is where the footer is. So again, this is the footer.php, and the very first thing we see is the content, and we have this footer with the ID colophon. We have some complicated stuff that's going on actually inside of this footer. But if I go ahead and put in something else inside this footer, copyright. Do I already have a copyright in here? No. Copyright 2018. Jonathan Davis. I go ahead and update this. I go ahead and put it Make sure I update the file through FTP, which I mean I could also do it through the file manager. Doesn't really matter. If I go ahead and refresh this, we see that copyright 2018, Jonathan Davis, INC. And again, if we view the source, we put that inside of the footer, but it exists exactly how it exists inside of our footer.php file. So that's the header and that's the footer. The header and the footer are pretty much straightforward in the sense that it exists on every single page. And we can kind of see a little bit of the content as we take a look at this. So the trick with the starter HTML, and we're going to get into what actually exists between this beginning div with the ID content and this ending div for content. We're going to get into that in a little bit because actually what exists between that might be a different file depending on what page we're actually on. But the header and footer are universal. So it might actually be index, it might actually be page, it might actually be archive. So it might be a slightly different file depending on where we are. But the footer and header stay the same. So when it comes to creating a starter template, we have a header and we have a footer. And just like with your static HTML, I mean, all the different article pages are going to share the same things which are going on in the header and the footer. So the thing is, any HTML code which is shared by all of your article pages can go inside this header and footer. The trick really is just navigating some of this PHP code. But if you're paying close attention, you're going to at least be able to identify where the PHP code exists. So again, we can kind of see this is angle bracket question mark PHP, and we can see that ends somewhere down here. So where this is some PHP code, we might not know exactly what all this stuff does. We can at least see like what is inside of what. We can at least see the organization of the HTML. So wherever there's normal HTML, we can see, oh, okay, that's an ID in a class. I know what that is. Oh, okay, well, I see a div here with a class. I know what that is. I don't know what this is. I don't know what this is. Oh, but I do see an ending div here, and that's the end of site branding. I can see by this quote here, this comment here, and that's ending off this thing. So even though I might not know exactly what's going on inside this site branding thing, I can at least see where the beginning and ending of this div is, so I can work my way around that. Now we might not even need this thing altogether. Like for example, in this footer, I mean, I would actually get rid of almost everything inside this footer and just create your own footer here. There's something here that you really need. So you can just write your own footer here. But again, the trick with the starter theme template is, again, kind of weaving in and out of this PHP code so that we can put in our static HTML code. And there's going to be a couple of spots, particularly what goes in between the beginning and ending content div. There's going to be a couple of spots where we're going to write some PHP code so that it knows to pull the actual information, the information for that specific article, and knows to pull it from the database rather than from static HTML. Yeah. Any questions on any of that?
For this class, are we just doing the news page, or are we?
So we're going to start off with using the starter template for the news website. And what I'd like to also get to, I'd like to do a second WordPress website where we base it off of a pre-made template. So this is where we're doing it completely from scratch, but I also kind of want to do a second WordPress website where we do from a pre-made template, because while some of the concepts translate, there's a different approach that you go through when you're working with a pre-made template. So I want to get into that, but I want to start with this one where we just do the start template. Now, if we do the pre-made template, I mean, I don't want you guys stressing about like creating a brand new like design or like that. So we're going to just use the same content as the news website. But yeah, does that answer your question? So we're going to be working with the same news website throughout the whole semester, but we're going to create a second WordPress website once we get to that point.
So I was thinking for my portfolio site, it would probably make sense that I use a WordPress. Since it, like, a portfolio site, like, all the project pages are the same, and you're just switching out content.
Yeah, it's up to you. The thing is, I would. The advantage of doing a portfolio website is it could potentially make it easier to update. So, for example, as you're like just doing projects, as you're doing like website projects, as you're doing design projects, if you want to be able to update your portfolio website with just like a couple of clicks, like then yeah, it can be easier to have that as a WordPress website. The only thing is, it takes a bit longer to set it up to begin with. So the thing is, I mean, because you're the only one editing your portfolio website and you know HTML, then yeah, there's nothing wrong with doing it as static HTML. The main purpose of doing a CMS is to be able to give it to someone who does not know HTML so that they can actually edit the content of their website. If you're dealing with HTML programmers, then it doesn't matter really.
So I could just not use I could just not use WordPress and just copy like a project page.
Yeah, you would just copy the HTML file and then just edit out the content.
Because yeah, I think it would take a lot of work to set it up.
Yeah, and it's up to you. I did my personal portfolio website in WordPress just because, for various reasons. One, I wanted to market myself as a WordPress programmer, but also I did have a lot of projects that I wanted to be able to edit very quickly and customize from them.
And then if you want to update it and change your payments,
yeah,
like redo.
Yeah.
So there's
Just to refresh it.
okay. I don't know.
But yeah. So the thing is, again, even though we haven't gotten into the nitty-gritty with editing this start template, does this process kind of start to make sense as far as like how we're actually going to be dealing with the start template? Okay, cool.